The headlines, the issues impacting you and your family this week in Cincinnati on 9 on your side.
Good morning to you and welcome to This Week in Cincinnati, and happy Easter. We're glad you're with us. I'm Kristen Hartman. First today, remembering a dark time in our nation's history. On Wednesday, it will be 50 years since the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. The terrible news from Memphis hit the nation hard, including Cincinnati. Avondale erupted in the same area where there had been riots just the year before. This is film from the WCPO 9 on Your Side archives. Our crews were in the thick of it to keep the community informed. The violence left 2 people dead and buildings in ruins. Businesses were destroyed. Many were small family-owned enterprises. And you know what? They never recovered. Joining us now to talk more about that day and the days that followed is Gina Ruffin Moore, the author of Cincinnati, the Black America series. I want to thank you for being here.
Thank you for inviting me.
So my question out the gate, how did the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. affect the city's development here and affect our history, really?
I think it affected us in many ways. Now, first we have to remember it was a very trying time anyway. The Vietnam War was going on. Sure. You had the civil rights movement. You had kids who were in high school whose friends were being drafted or enlisted in the military, and some of their friends dying. Yeah. So Cincinnati was not unique in that way. And when the riots broke out in Cincinnati, they also broke out in more than 100 other cities throughout the nation. But uniquely for Cincinnati, the riots started in Avondale. And it's sort of odd the way they started. There was a rally at the corner of Rockdale and Reading. When you go to that corner right now, there's a statue of Abraham Lincoln, and there had been a peaceful rally. But after the rally, there was a guy using his own handgun to guard a jewelry store, and he got into a tussle with someone who was trying to loot the jewelry store. Well, when they went back and forth, the gun went off and it hit the guy's wife. So a rumor went through the community and through the crowd.
Like a shockwave.
Like a shockwave, exactly. Yeah. That a white police officer just killed this guy's wife for no reason at all. So the information got twisted, and that's what led to a lot of the melee. People were already upset over Dr. King being shot. And you got to keep in mind the young people during this time, they were very used to demonstrating and seeing demonstrations from Martin Luther King in the South, and Martin Luther King had visited Cincinnati several times, but what was different now was he had been killed. And so a lot of the young people were thinking maybe nonviolence is not the answer. So that's why the violence erupted for one reason. And then another theory is the violence erupted because there were outside agitators involved. Some even say that certain business people were paying people to set fire to certain businesses because maybe they had plans for those businesses. I can't prove that, but that's one theory that's out there. Because I always used to wonder, and everyone used to say, why would someone set fire to their own neighborhood? And why would someone set fire to a business right below where they live? Well, a lot of the people setting fire were not necessarily from here. A lot of the demonstrators were not necessarily from here. But one good positive change that came out of it when it comes to Cincinnati public schools, one of the things that changed was they started having more history classes that focused on Black history and also German American history, so that people would learn to appreciate their own heritage and their background. And have pride of place. Exactly. Yeah. That's a good way to put it.
You have studied this probably more than most people. So I have to ask you this question. If something like this were to happen today, in terms of if you had a figure such as Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and that happened, God forbid, how do you think Cincinnati would react today?
I don't know. It's possible that we might react the same way. But then again, I think more people today realize that violence is not the answer. I think during that time when it had happened, people were getting tired of Martin Luther King's approach, some people were, of his nonviolent approach. And younger people like Stokely Carmichael and others, they were saying we need to push Black Power and the Black Power movement. And if anyone assaults us, we need to assault them back. But I think if something like that happened where a major leader was killed here in Cincinnati, I would venture to say maybe we would not see riots like we saw before.
What do you think we learned outside of pride of place? What was perhaps the other valuable lesson or valuable lessons?
I think one of the valuable lessons from what happened during the riots is that we have to make sure that people have the wherewithal to have jobs and proper living conditions. Because what precipitated the riots also was, it had been a long, hot summer in 1967, and there was a riot in 67. And in Cincinnati, there were only certain neighborhoods blacks could live in. The West End, Avondale, or out in what they call the Valley. The Valley area would be Lockland, Lincoln Heights, Woodlawn, Wyoming area. So because of gentrification and the fact that you could not live in a quality neighborhood, not everybody, most people could, but a lot of black people, they were also facing discrimination when it came to getting jobs. And you ran into a lot of people who say, well, if I can't be a man and take care of my family, I'll just leave. I'm not gonna even try, and that became a problem. People had their own businesses, but you gotta keep in mind where I-75 is right now, that was a thriving African-American business community. That's where the West End business community was. So with the dislocation of a lot of private businesses and then people having to move to Avondale, that left a void when it came to providing people with quality housing and quality jobs to sufficiently take care of their family.
And you talk about that pride of place. That's so important to the pride of place, and it's so important to feel as if you're a part of the fabric of the community.
Exactly, and some people felt that they weren't.
Yeah. Gina, thank you for your perspective.
Oh, sure.
We really appreciate it, and we hope to talk to you in the future.
Thank you.
Next on this